If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. Wherever you are, make it Truth Frequency Radio.
Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, on Super Bowl Sunday, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We may go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. I normally would run an archive on Super Bowl Sunday for obvious reasons. I would like to be out there celebrating with all of you. Right now it's 10:10, just to keep you posted. Not going to give you the official NFL rundown, but the news of next week is so important that I felt compelled to do a live program tonight. Those of you that are listening to this as a YouTube archive tomorrow or the next day, don't miss a minute. So many important things will be discussed tonight. It's going to affect the future in a big way. You need to be aware so you know what's going on. You know where to stand. You know what to think for yourself and what to be aware of. Lots has happened in the last week, especially with the impeachment show, season 5. You think it's over? But I've got news for you. There's more information tonight. You don't want to miss this. We also have a coronavirus update, and we have a Space Force update and other cool things. You can turn the sound down on the game, and you can turn this up and listen to this, and you can do both at the same time. That's what I'm doing right now. If I can do it, you can do it. First, let me give you the Religion of Peace report. In the last 7 days, the Religion of Peace conducted 30 attacks. In these 30 attacks, they killed 246 innocent people. They injured 81 innocent people. They conducted 2 suicide blasts and spread their mayhem across 11 countries. Just so you know what the Religion of Peace has been doing for the last 7 days. Coronavirus update. Over the past few days, the mainstream press has been vigorously pushed back against a theory about the origins of the coronavirus that has now infected as many as, we don't really know, 70,000 people. I haven't been to Wuhan since 2012. So it's a big city. There's a lot going on. It's tremendously industrialized. There's a lot of work going on all the time in Wuhan. The theory is that China obtained the coronavirus via a Canadian research program and started molding it into a bioweapon at the Institute of Virology in Wuhan. That's where their bioweapons lab is located. Well, fingers have been pointed at various news organizations, Zero Hedge, PolitiFact, all kinds out there, and we're going to try to cut through that for you here using a little bit of biochemistry and a little bit of logic. The theory is that the virus, which was developed by infectious disease experts, may have originated in the Wuhan-based lab of Dr. Peng Zhao, China's preeminent researcher of bat immune systems, specifically in how their immune systems adapt to the presence of viruses like coronavirus and other destructive viruses. And somehow, and this is something we may not even speculate on tonight, the virus escaped from the lab. And the Hunan fish market, where the virus supposedly originated, is merely a ruse. That's just a ruse. If you look at the press on that, you can see right through it. It is a fish market that notoriously is blamed for serving banned animals. This is just the type of news item and slant on the news that activists like to take advantage of. So we distrust that. We don't think that this originated 20 miles away from the lab. We think it originated very close to the lab itself. Now, a respected epidemiologist who recently caught flack for claiming in a Twitter thread that the virus appeared to be much more contagious than initially believed is pointing out irregularities in the virus's genome. Now, I'm going to try not to get too complicated here because we're going to talk a little bit about stereochemistry and the way viruses work. Think of a virus as a lunar lander module. It has legs on it. It has a roof on it. It has a specific shape, and it's designed to be a key that fits into an enzymatic lock. This is the way viruses propagate. Now, either viruses are the simplest form of life, having no respiration whatsoever, but still being able to propagate itself and replicate, or it is the most complex form of life, having reduced the amount of energy that it requires to survive to just that required to duplicate or to replicate. They do not divide in and of themselves. They're not like cells. They don't have protoplasm. They don't have a life cycle per se. No, instead, they operate like little lunar landers. They land, they hook up, they inject their genetic material into a living cell. That cell then is stimulated to divide. And when it divides, guess what it does? It replicates the RNA of the virus itself, thus making more viruses. So the virus itself does not have to have a reproductive system. It uses the cells that it infects as the reproductive system. Now, not all viruses are virulent. That is to say, not all viruses make us sick. Some viruses do make us sick, and they make us sick in a variety of ways. This particular virus operates in a way that attacks the histamine system first, as flu always does, kind of gives you the aches and the pains and makes you not want to move. Your body responds with a histamine reaction. That is to say, your mucous membranes flood with mucus, trying to wash the pathogen out of the body. It's just something the physiology of the human body does. That, of course, makes us feel miserable because your sinuses swell, your nose runs, it goes down your throat, you get a sore throat, and it begins to fill up your lungs. Now, something else happens when the lungs begin to fill, and that is that you form a wonderful anaerobic environment for pneumonia to grow. Pneumonia is anaerobic. In other words, if it's exposed to oxygen, it doesn't propagate. If it's buried deep in mucus where it can get away from oxygen or anything that would oxidize it, then it replicates. That's why we use hydrogen peroxide. It kills gram-positive bacteria like pneumococci, but you can't fill your lungs with hydrogen peroxide. Typically, what we would do to treat it is we'd fill the lungs with some kind of hormone in a mist, and that would either competitively inhibit or somehow render the virus or the bacteria where it's unable to divide, and then you'd get better in a couple days. But the pneumonia itself, the pneumococci, is not what kills you. What kills you is the waste from the pneumococci. The waste is toxic, and the waste goes directly into your bloodstream, which then poisons your blood and kills you. And if you're over 60 years old, you're particularly susceptible to this, partly because you're usually a little bit more out of shape, but mostly it's because your lungs are pretty much wore out. You've been exposed to a lot of other colds and coughing and scarring and maybe smoking, and maybe you're have a lot of wear and tear on your lungs, and over 60, you're more susceptible to pneumonia than people that are under 60. And this is the primary mechanism by which people die from most viruses. This particular virus has some uncanny characteristics about it. Most of the time what happens is when viruses replicate over and over and over and over again, remember that I told you they don't have their own replication system, they use yours. Well, everybody's body is slightly different, okay? You have different genetics, you have different environments, you have a different consciousness, if you will, and that causes mutations in the virus. Of course, your body's going to be building antibodies to the virus as fast as it possibly can, and hopefully you beat the virus and form an immunity to it. But the bottom line is that over time, the virus is going to change genetically. It's either going to get more virulent or less virulent. That is to say, more dangerous or less dangerous. If it becomes more dangerous, like, I don't know, Ebola, where it has a very short gestation period and all the people that get it die, in which case the virus doesn't propagate very well because it doesn't spread, because the host dies. On the other hand, if it has a very long gestation period, like say 14 days, and you don't even show symptoms for 10 or 12 of those days, then you have the makings of a pandemic, because these people can travel at will and nobody knows they're sick, and they get on airplanes and they sit in restaurants and they take buses and trains and they sit in auditoriums and they go to schools, and it spreads very, very quickly, and before you know it, you have a very lot of sick people. But there is also some uncanny similarities in these what are called inserts in the genetic makeup of this virus. Normally, when we look at these things under an electron microscope, we can see the virus. We can look at it. Most viruses kind of look like a piece of spaghetti with some active parts and some inactive parts. The coronavirus kind of looks like a little crown or a little pollen ball. It's a different structure of virus. That being said, occasionally, as I said, these things will mutate, but there are probabilities in these mutations. They occur in predictable areas. When we see what are called inserts, these are functional groups of amino acids that are stuck into the virus, it begins to look a little like engineering. It begins to look a little bit like genetic engineering. When we see the coronavirus, it really takes our breath away, because it has a very similar physical structure to the virus that makes people HIV positive, HIV-1. So, and these are Indian researchers, and they're baffled by segments of the virus's RNA that have no relation to other coronaviruses like SARS. You remember SARS is way back in, the early 2000s. People got sick and died from that. We thought that was going to be the next pandemic, and it wasn't. It was terrible, but it was not a pandemic. But it doesn't look like that. It looks very close to HIV. The virus even responds to treatment by HIV medications, which means enzymatically, that is to say, the physical shape of the virus, it looks very similar to HIV, and therefore it responds to drugs that are designed to competitively inhibit that function of that kind of virus. So, in addition to the other studies that have linked this coronavirus to SARS, we therefore compared the spike glycoprotein sequences of the 2019 coronavirus to the SARS coronavirus. On careful examination of the sequence alignment, we found that the Current version, spike glycoprotein, contains 4 insertions. To further investigate if these inserts are present in any other coronavirus, we performed a multiple sequence alignment of the spike glycoprotein amino acid sequences of all available coronaviruses. This includes 1 sequence of the modern one, and we found that these 4 insertions are unique to this coronavirus. They are not present in other coronaviruses analyzed. Another group from China had documented 3 insertions comparing fewer spike glycoprotein sequences. Another group from China had documented 3 insertions comparing fewer spike glycoprotein sequences of coronaviruses. So between 3 and 4 insertions means, to those of us that are in the mechanochemistry industry, that this is an engineered virus. If it's an engineered virus, where was it built? Most likely it was built in Wuhan, where the outbreak occurred. The question always arises, why do they build this kind of stuff? Why do we work on stuff? Why does people like DARPA and the CIA, why do they fund this kind of research with universities? Oh, they do. And of course, the news is a little different because the universities, they're not, of course, assigned to develop a new bioweapon. No. They are designed, or at least paid, or at least encouraged to use, or to develop research to use viruses as a mechanism for drug delivery or to cure certain things like cancer or diabetes, or, because I told you these are little lunar landers, and what they do is they inject RNA. And if you can engineer the RNA, you can do genetic changes in physiology by making the virus be the carrier of your drug. It's brilliant, and several universities have won Nobel Prizes for this, and they have patents on this. But when you look at who pays the money to develop these cures, it is DARPA. And DARPA isn't interested in cures. DARPA is interested in weapons. And I'm here to tell you that the mechanism for developing a cure and developing a weapon is exactly the same. The mechanism is exactly the same. So the other answer to that question, why do they build these kinds of things, is, and I hear this all the time when I meet with my military business associates in the association, if we don't do it, somebody will. We have to do it in order to develop a defense against it. So we do. It's a legitimate excuse. I hear it all the time. It's almost universal. So why do these authors of these various reports think the virus may be man-made? It's because when looking at the insertions, which are not present in any of the closest associated coronaviruses, so we're not talking about a natural mutation, it is quite unlikely for a virus to have acquired such a unique insertion, or 2 or 3 or 4 insertions naturally in a short duration of time. And by short duration, I mean, 1 to 5 years. Instead, they can be found in cell identification and membrane binding proteins located in the HIV genome. So why would you want to take a virus like the coronavirus, which is responsible for flu, and experiment with the insertions and make it look like an HIV virus? Well, there are one of 2 answers. One, maybe you're developing a cure for HIV and you're using the coronavirus as the mechanism for delivery of the drug. Make it look like HIV. It's adopted by the body like HIV. It squeezes HIV out of the parking place. In other words, it competitively inhibits the HIV virus from propagating in the human body because it replaces it with the coronavirus. Or you're trying to use the well-known mechanism of the HIV virus to undo the immune system of the human body, and that way a simple illness like pneumonia becomes deadly. Well, since the S protein of the coronavirus shares closest ancestry with the SARS virus of about 20 years ago, the sequence coding for spike proteins of these two viruses were compared, and as I told you, they have been found to be quite different. In my notes, which you can always get by going to tfrlive.com and clicking on or /X2 radio and clicking on the notes tab or notes link, you can get a copy of my notes. I'm going to go ahead and leave the image of this virus in my notes so you can look at the similarities between HIV and the coronavirus. It's quite striking. It does not look like something random at all. So that's why this is out there. Now, the virus has resulted in at least what we know, because China is notorious for suppressing news. They do it naturally. It's their natural news system in China. They don't like bad news to circulate in China. And there are a couple theories on this. I'm going to share them with you because we just have, let's see how many minutes we got left in this segment. We got about 5 minutes. So I want to share with you that there are a couple theories as to why this may have happened. First of all, it could have been a mistake. It escaped. It got out in Wuhan. So we shut down a city of 10 million people. 100,000 cases have been reported worldwide. Not too many outside of China, but a few. All the deaths and the overwhelming majority of infections are centered in China, specifically in Wuhan. And you're quarantining the largest number of people ever in history. This is not good news. It's not good news for anybody. It's not good news for Wuhan. It's not good news for China. It's certainly not good news for, and that brings me to my second point, the Chinese economy. The Chinese economy has taken a hell of a hit in the last 3 years. Why? Well, 2 words: Donald Trump. China had a roaring 20s, 20 years of unprecedented growth. The United States State Department fed China missile technology, manufacturing technology flowed to it from a variety of Fortune 100 companies in a massive technology transfer requirement that they had to do business with them. And China was blowing and going. I drive from here to South Carolina almost every single day. And when I do, I pass companies on the side of the freeway that are loaded with empty shipping containers. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Every city in every state in the country is selling empty shipping containers. Why? Because China sold us stuff. China sold us stuff, and we had nothing to put in those shipping containers to send back to China because China bought nothing from us. $500 billion a year in goods that came to the United States, and we sold them nothing. We have empty shipping containers to show for it. We could scrap them and make money. We're trying to get rid of them. We're selling them for a song. They're everywhere. We don't export anything to China. And so what Donald Trump did is he said no more. We don't mind buying from you, but you're going to buy from us. And the problem is anything we want to sell to China immediately gets a 17 to 100% tariff on it, which means our stuff can't compete price-wise with Chinese stuff in the Chinese market. We can't sell in China because they price us out of the market. This is what had to be fixed. Now, many people, everyone except me, was saying that Donald Trump would fail, that China was too big, China was too successful, China had all the money, China owned our debt. And it's true. But China has one thing we don't have. China has 1.2 billion Chinese. And China forgot to take Chinese into consideration. Those Chinese people liked having that economy. And they watch TV and they listen to radio and they do access the internet and they find out things that they want and they want it now. And they're borrowing to get it. They're working hard to get it, but they can't because the government is holding it back from them. And so once the tariffs began on Chinese goods to the United States, what happened is it made Chinese goods competitive with goods from other countries, from Vietnam, from Canada, from Mexico, from Malaysia, from Vietnam, from Singapore. And guess what American companies did? Guess what American retailers and consumers did? They bought stuff from other countries. And that began to slow down the revenue model for China. And what did that do? It, of course, upset the left because they don't want to upset China because everybody's getting a kickback from that stuff. But what it ended up doing is bringing China to the negotiating table, and they signed the first trade agreement ever in history. And Donald Trump did that. So the playing field is leveling, but the Chinese economy is suffering because they have been looking for something to do with massive amounts of profit. They have built billion-dollar ghost cities. Nobody lives in them. They have high-rises and hotels and factories, and they're all empty. Why? Because they had to do something with all the money they were making. And now they're not. And now they're not. And so they need an event to take that out of the news, and hence the coronavirus. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming at you right after this.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Do you have any of these symptoms? Night cramps in the hands and feet. Your arms and legs often go to sleep. On short walks, do your legs get aches and pains? Is your memory worse than it used to be? Ankles that swell late in the day? Has your blood pressure increased lately? If you answered yes to even one of these questions, you may have early warning signs of arterial blockages. Your body is saying that it is time to take Extendivite. These are not the normal signs of aging. They are the warning signs that accompany blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies in a capsule.
It's a great product. And the one thing I like about it the most is that when you open the bottles, you can smell like the scent of the fruits and veggies. It's no genius thing to it. It's really just fruits and veggies, which everyone needs. And you guys kind of put it in a way where you can take it easy and you can get it and it's natural. And that's what I like about it. You know, I like the product, and I've taken it, and it's definitely made me feel a lot better. You know, I'm a healthy person to begin with, but it's definitely good prevention, and it's definitely gives me energy, and I feel like it's a natural thing. I like it. I really do.
For a limited time, use discount code TALK to receive a 50% discount on your first preferred whole health system and have it shipped to you free. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go online to balanceofnature.com. Again, use discount code TALK.
Dowsing is the ancient science of finding water and metal underground. Albert Einstein said that dowsing was tapping into earth energies which modern science as yet does not understand. Diamonds, silver, gold, and platinum objects have all been found using dowsing. And now, for the first time on film, we visit the pyramids, Stonehenge, and ancient sites, dowsing for buried treasure and tapping into this mysterious earth energy.
The Enigma Channel. Intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
I was watching the Super Bowl earlier, and I noticed Terry Bradshaw had my hat on, so I had to get it down and put it on. Thanks very much, Terry, for wearing it. Great game. It's 10-10. Nobody thought it would be like this, but I've got it Chiefs by 3. We'll just see how it comes out. I don't know. I don't have any. Well, okay, little money on, but not much. Just because it's an American tradition, you know, to kind of go. But one observation I make is I've looked over the entire field, and there is no blue to be found anywhere. Yes, it's true. The Super Bowl for 2020, 2/20/2020, is all red. Vote red, baby. Want to let you know, February 8th is the next first class for my webinar, my Second Chance Success Mentoring webinar. It's only $47, and that gets you 2 classes. You get the first class, and then 2 weeks later we do the second class, which is a follow-up on the journaling portion of the class. It's probably going to be the best $47 you spend on yourself this year. You don't have to leave the house. You don't have to get out of your pajamas. It's Saturday at noon for 2 hours. It's very easy to do. And I recommend that you go to my website, brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link, and sign up. There are 2 dates posted. One's in February, one's in March. We will be doing one a month for a while. As I said, there are 2 classes to this first phase. You get both of them and 2 copies of the signed book for $47. It's the best deal out there. I'm doing it for you. You get a chance to have access to one of the best Six Sigma Master Black Belts in the country. I help the Fortune 100 make money every day with my skills. I might as well help you. You've been loyal listeners to this program, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. So let's move on here. I want to talk a little bit about President Trump's Palestinian peace plan. It was announced this week, and it was received well and then not so well. And I'm going to explain both sides to that and why this is happening. President Trump unveiled his long-awaited deal of the century plan a Tuesday of this week, just a few days ago, offering Palestinians a state, $50 billion, and predictably enough, the Palestinians and their supporters are pissed. Yeah, they're not happy at all. No. The way they have expressed that rage is a new indication of why all the peace plans up till now have failed, and why all future plans are probably doomed to fail as well. An Islamic Republic press organ, the Tehran Times, reported, and I quote, Iranian Parliament Speaker Ali Larijani on Wednesday, that was the day after the president's announcement, in a letter to Parliament speakers of the Islamic states, urged Islamic countries to counter the U.S. proposal, so-called deal of the century. A caliph, ISIS caliph, his name is Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi, al-Quraishi called on all Muslims worldwide to thwart President Donald Trump's peace plan and added that the Muslims who live in Palestine will be at the forefront of the fight against the Jews and foiling the deal of the century, close quote. In Turkey, very, very similar thing, according to Yeni Safak, and I quote, Turkish demonstrators poured onto streets across the country on Tuesday to protest President Trump's long-awaited Middle East peace plan. Many protesters at the rally held placards bearing slogans reading, Jerusalem belongs to Islam, close quote. Here's the truth of it. Even before the plan was announced, the official Palestinian Authority, this would be Al-Hayat al-Hadida, on Monday, declared that the Palestinian National Council again expressed its objection to every plan, every project, every deal, and every attempt to harm the Palestinian people's inalienable rights. It called upon the PLO to take all the necessary steps to encourage and escalate the resistance and the struggle against the occupation in all its forms and manners. Islamic states should counter the plan. Muslims worldwide should work to thwart it. Jerusalem belongs to Islam. Palestinians should escalate their jihad. And the congresswoman from Palestine is saying a similar thing. Yes, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is the congresswoman from Palestine, is echoing these same sentiments. And that means that no negotiated settlement, none, will ever establish Israel securely and end the jihad against it. And that's why analysts ignore Islam when considering the conflict, because people don't like bad news. They don't like problems that cannot be solved. We're not made that way. Nonetheless, this is the reality of the situation, and no good can ever come from ignoring this reality. In light of the role of Islam in the conflict, a Palestinian state would simply be a new base for more jihad attacks against Israel, as the withdrawal from Gaza demonstrated. Even though it was done in good faith, none of it was accepted. Its establishment would not bring peace. The idea that Palestinians or their allies or supporters will ever sincerely accept Israel's right to exist is just simply a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. And the refusal of analysts of the Israeli-Palestine conflict to face the role of Islamic theology in the conflict is astonishingly naive and ethnocentric. The Palestinians and their supporters will never accept the Trump peace plan because of Islamic imperatives that mandate that Islam must dominate and must not be dominated, and that any land that once was ruled by Islamic law must be ruled by Islamic law forever. Unless and until these facts are taken into account, every single peace plan is foredoomed. So watch for a lot of hoopla. I know Jared Kushner worked very hard on this. I know that Ivanka Trump worked very hard on this. I know some very smart people that work for President Trump are putting money together and plans together and high-speed rails together and schools and roads and, my gosh, trash pickup together. And none of it is going to work. Why? Because the global syndicate doesn't want it to work. The global syndicate wants the world to stay at conflict. And the biggest conflict the global syndicate has ever had, has been religion. They formed it, they designed it, they wrote most of the copy for all the ideologies, and most of that copy orders the people that are zealots in that religion to hate all other religions. It is absolutely brilliant in its chaos and confusion. And it is the core of the global syndicate's effort to keep this world divided and at war. So they're never going to allow this to happen. Islam was formed as a warlike religion, as an ideology that either converts or kills everyone in the world. Obviously, not a very tolerant ideology. All right, let's talk a little bit about Seth Rich. He has been in the news again lately, or at least people talking about him have been in the news lately. We will never forget Seth Rich on this program. I wrote the book Charm of Favor, and I believe it's chapter 3 in the book puts you into Seth Rich's last day on this planet. It is fictional, but it is very heartfelt, and I believe it's very close to what actually went on at Lou City Bar and shortly thereafter. If you want to experience it in memoriam, then I think what you should do is read the book. If you haven't read the book, then you need to get on it. Also, one of the other things I want to encourage you to do, because there are about 62 people here tonight live, which is pretty good for a Super Bowl Sunday, and the score is still 10-10. All red on the field, by the way. No blue involved in America's greatest game. And that's the way it's going to be in November. Blue is not going to be anywhere to be found. It's going to be red landslide. A persistent American lawyer has uncovered the undeniable fact that the FBI has been continuously lying, including giving false testimony in court under oath in response to Freedom of Information requests for its records on Seth Rich. Seth Rich was a staffer who worked for the DNC. If you don't know what happened to him, he was murdered in cold blood, shot in the back while walking home from Lou's City Bar on July 10th of, I believe it was 2016. And this was in very short succession with a couple other very big things that happened. Very big. The first very big thing that happened was that Loretta Lynch flew unexpectedly, changed her flight plans to do it, flew unexpectedly from Baltimore with her husband in a chartered jet all the way to Sky Harbor Hotel in Arizona and met on the tarmac at about 2 o'clock in the morning with former President Bill Clinton on the tarmac. Bill Clinton walked out of his airplane into an SUV, drove, of course it's still 100 degrees, drove over to her jet, got out, walked up the stairs, went inside her jet, and they sat and talked for 45 minutes. That's the first very big thing. Shortly thereafter, Seth Rich is killed. Shortly thereafter, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is fired as the head of the DNC. Right before she gets to put on the big dress and be part of the convention, she's pissed about that. And it happened because, and this is the other very big event, information was handed en masse to operatives for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks promptly went through it, found that it was legitimate, and published it. And this is what revealed that the DNC was cheating in the primary. They were cheating in the primary. Can you imagine such a thing? It's hard to believe. I mean, look what's happening to Bernie Sanders again. Not that I really want Bernie Sanders to win or be the nominee, because I really don't think socialism has a place in the United States of America, but still, a primary is a primary. And the same thing was going on in 2016. So that was released. Some retribution was immediately taken. Some tempers flared. Orders were given. Seth Rich is murdered, and everything settles down. No, the investigation never happened. No one ever went to Lou City Bar. No one ever talked to anybody. Nobody ever came by and looked at the surveillance tapes, which has since been overwritten several times now. All that evidence is gone. A Freedom of Information request to the FBI, which did not mention Seth Rich, but asked for all email correspondence between the FBI head of counterterrorism, Peter Strzok, who headed the investigation into the DNC leaks and WikiLeaks, by the way, also was a key player in all of the Russia stuff for President Trump. And FBI attorney Lisa Page, who was the naughty librarian there at the FBI, I'm sure she has a great career ahead of her, has revealed 2 pages of emails which do not merely mention Seth Rich, but have Seth Rich as the heading. Yeah, the email is about Seth Rich. The emails were provided in, to say the least, heavily redacted form. Like the header says, R.E. Seth Rich. And then almost the entire rest of the email is redacted. Every name, every date, every place, all redacted. Why? Well, before I analyze these particular emails, I should make plain that the emails aren't really the point. It's not why I'm talking about this subject. The point is that what was once thought to be a botched robbery, because nothing was taken, no money, no watch, no nothing. He was just gunned down on the sidewalk. But the fact that the FBI claimed it didn't have any records mentioning Seth Rich. And now these emails have come to light through these FOIA requests. And what has become apparent is that there are other falsely denied documents that the FBI has about Seth Rich, that they were not fortuitously picked up by a search for correspondence between 2 named individuals. Now, if you look at the documents themselves, they have to be read from the bottom up. They consist of a series of emails between members of the Washington field office of the FBI, into which Peter Strzok was copied, and which he ultimately forwarded on to the naughty librarian lawyer Lisa Page. Why? Because if you look at their 50,000 tweets, 50,000 texts to one another, you'll see that their main focus for being an FBI agent for the last 3 years has been to get rid of Donald Trump. Now, why in the world would they be mentioning Seth Rich in emails with the FBI when their main goal is to get rid of Donald Trump? You see, the media handlers are asking the operations side of the FBI field office for any information on the case. The unredacted part of the reply fits with the official narrative. The redacted individual officer is not aware of any specific involvement by the FBI in the Seth Rich case, but his next sentence completely redacted. Why? What do you have to hide about Seth Rich? It appears that adding references to a new person added into the list, this appears to not have worked. And probably the same person, which, by the way, if you look at the redaction, it's precisely the same length of redaction. They then try again with adding "for real" and blames the technology, "stupid Samsung." The interesting point here is that the person added appears not to be in the FBI. A new redacted address E does indeed appear, and unlike all the others, does not have an FBI suffix, either after deleted email addresses. So who is this non-FBI person that's mentioned in an FBI email? Who is this person? The other thing to pay attention to here is the odd hours at which these emails took place. FBI agents probably work just like you and me, 8 to 5, right? We're 8 to 5, especially in the top 4 floors. But this fourth email, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, Wednesday, seems to be right in the middle of the normal business day, August 10th, 2016, is the most interesting. It is ostensibly also from the Washington field office, but it is from somebody using a different classified email system, not the FBI system, with a very different time and date format than the others. It also apparently is from someone much more senior, as the reply to is "will do," like "I will follow your instructions." Now remember, this is 2016. Obama is still president. Every single word of this email is redacted, except for the header. The final email says that, and I quote, "I squashed this with," and that's blanked out from this new person again with the shortest name. And that phrase may only have meant I denied this to a journalist, or I may have been reporting an operational command given. As the final act in this drama that I'm trying to unfold for you, Peter Strzok is then sent the entire thread onto the lawyer, which is why it came up in this FOIA search. But why? It's perfectly possible to fill in the blanks with a conversation that completely fits the official narrative. The deletions could say this was a waste of time and the FBI was not looking at the Rich case. But in that case, the FBI would have been delighted to publish it unredacted, right? If it had nothing to do with anything. The small numbers in the right-hand margins supposedly detail the exception to the FOIA under which deletion was made. If you're going to redact something in a FOIA, you have to have a code like national security or executive privilege or something. You got to put something in there. Otherwise, the judge is going to say, no, you have to release this information. You have to have a reason. And there are these codes on the right-hand margin that you can put in there. And these were there. And if it just all said, look, Assange is talking nonsense, blah, 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 Seth Rich is nothing to do with the FBI, then why in the world would that have been sent to Strzok and to the FBI lawyer? It wouldn't have been. It is, of course, fortunate that Strzok did forward this, or we wouldn't have it, because the FOIA would never have revealed it. Finally, and perhaps this is the most important point, and listen closely here, the FBI was at this time supposed to be in the early stages of an investigation into how the DNC emails were leaked to WikiLeaks. We already know how they weren't leaked to WikiLeaks. The DNC server was not hacked. I repeat, they were not hacked. The servers were not hacked because the fastest internet in the world could not transfer the information from the DNC server to the storage device as fast as it happened, like by a factor of 100. The only way it could have been transferred that quickly is with a thumb drive or an external hard drive. It is the only way it can happen, which means somebody had to be standing in the flesh at that server and plug that device into that server and download that information, pull that device out, stick it in their pocket, and walk out the door. That's what we do know. We don't know who did it, but we do know that's how it was done. But the official narrative, even to this day, has been that the Russians hacked the DNC server, which is not what happened. It's not what happened. Surely, in any real legitimate investigation, the investigators would have been absolutely compelled to check out the truth of this possibility rather than treat it in the media the way it was treated. We are asked to believe that none of these emails says, well, if the publisher of the email says Seth Rich was the source, we better check that out, especially as he was murdered with no sign of a suspect. But that's not what it said. If the FBI really did not look at that, why on earth not? Because they already knew, and they were covering it up. If the FBI genuinely, as they claim, did not look at the murder of Seth Rich, that would surely be the most damning fact of all. And it would reveal that their entire investigation was part of a higher agenda that was being driven by the White House. And that is why we got the story that we did. That's why Seth Rich is not remembered. Yes, it's very often the case that family members, they're extremely resistant to the notion that the murder of a relative may have wider political implications. That's perfectly natural. The appalling grief of losing a loved one to a murder is extraordinary, and to reject the cognitive dissonance of having your political worldview shattered at the same time is very natural. I get it. I understand that. But truth is truth. And as Seth Rich was passionate about Bernie Sanders being treated fairly, and knowing that he was being treated unfairly, that he was being cheated, and he thought if he could get that information into WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks could share with the public that maybe, just maybe, he could give Bernie Sanders a fair shot. Thumbs up or thumbs down, a fair shot. And he never lived to see it. The main point I'm trying to make here is the evidence is that the FBI lied. I don't know if they had anything to do with the murder, but it's very clear that it is the official policy that whoever did do it will not be found, and they will not be revealed by the FBI. I maintain that Seth Rich was murdered in cold blood. It is my feeling that he was killed as retribution for significantly aiding in the smuggling data from DNC to WikiLeaks. The ones most closely linked to his murder, Donna Brazile, Debbie Schultz, and Hillary Clinton. We'll be right back after this.
Censorship and regulation is becoming an ever-growing problem in today's modern media. From the mainstream to YouTube and Google, the information you're looking for is buried by official narratives and propaganda. This is why TFR is 100% uncensored, unregulated, and listener-supported. The shows on TFR are not micromanaged by the station, and our hosts are free to speak their minds however they please. As such, the views and opinions expressed on our station are of those who make them. If you happen to hear anything offensive on TFR, please send us an email to toughtitty@tfrlive.com, and we'll be happy to tell you that we really don't give a damn. We stand for freedom of speech and non-censorship. If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
Super Bowl, super spending. I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News. As the Chiefs and 49ers vie for the Vince Lombardi Trophy in Super Bowl 54, both teams tied at 10 at the half. Two billionaires running for president saw their campaign shell out some big bucks for campaign ads airing during the game. President Trump's campaign paying $11 million for two 30-second ads, touting his record. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg paying the same amount for one 60-second spot. As is customary, the incumbent does a pre-game interview on the network televising the game, in this case Fox. Sean Hannity asking the questions, President Trump bringing up Pocahontas, his nickname for Elizabeth Warren.
This woman can't tell the truth. Michael Bloomberg. Very little. I just think of little. Now he wants a box for the debates to stand on. Okay, it's okay. There's nothing wrong. You could be short. Why should he get a box to stand on, okay?
Bloomberg calling that a lie and the president a pathological liar. He is not competing in Iowa's caucuses tomorrow or in next week's New Hampshire primary, waiting until March 3rd, Super Tuesday, when 14 states, including California, hold their primaries. California moving its contest up this year. 4 Democratic senators running for president head back to Washington tonight. Attendance mandatory for closing arguments in the president's impeachment trial. A 9th confirmed case of coronavirus in this country. A Chinese woman now hospitalized in the San Francisco Bay Area. 2 Miami of Ohio students considered possible cases. This as China reports another 57 deaths since yesterday, 367 so far. Fox News.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Most current news, it's 13-10, not 10-10, so they're not tied up anymore. San Francisco has pulled ahead. I predict the team in red will win tonight. Just want to let you know that we got a couple of great conferences coming up. One is the Human Origins Conference. This is the first one that's coming up pretty quick, April 2nd through 5th. I highly recommend, if you're anywhere close to Albuquerque, New Mexico, within a couple 100 miles, you need to make the drive over there. 30 hours of the best speakers in the world are going to be there. And it's affordable. It's at a great resort. It starts off the year. It's a great event. If you can't make that one, there's a one the following week in Sedona, Arizona, where I'll be speaking. And then after that, Contact in the Desert. Now, the Contact in the Desert is really the Mac Daddy. It's the largest event of its kind in the world. If you like large events with 5,000 or 6,000 people at them, this is the one to come to. At the Human Origins Conference, I'm going to be giving my world-famous Remembering the Future presentation. If you haven't seen it, there are a couple ways to do it. The best way is to see it live because it's an audio-visual experience. It will change you. The second way you can do it is by signing up for one of my webinars. I will give the lecture in the webinar. You'll be sitting there in your seat and not really, part of a crowd watching it and not moved by the emotion of the room, but it's good nonetheless. At Contact in the Desert, I am going to be giving a new lecture. This is probably going to herald the introduction of my newest book that I'm working on. It's so new, I don't have a title for it yet, but we are pounding away at it. And this book is on asteroid mining and the future of energy. I know it sounds very futuristic. It did in 1968 when I first introduced it, but now it's a reality. Now there are private companies that are actually going after it. We're witnessing the early threshold of the next gold rush. Yeah, nothing is going to be able to hold back these ships. They're going to be launching from all over the world to get to those asteroids. Some of them are worth $400 billion. That's worth a year at space, don't you think? That much money, one ship. It's almost the same as getting a little wooden ship in the 1500s, selling everything you own to get on it, reaching these shores, and then making your fortune, putting it on a ship and sending it back to Europe. You know that statement, I'm waiting for my ship to come in? That's where it came from, because one shipment would make you a wealthy man. It's the same thing. we are now entering a new frontier. And the new frontier is what keeps man free and humankind ever expanded. Because I think if you get right down to it, we are an explorer race. We only become warlike when the frontier runs out. So we are coming to you live from the America Free Radio studio, somewhere east of the Appalachian Mountains. And this is X Squared Radio. And I am your host, Brooks Agnew. Thankful that the YouTube chat room is full of people tonight. Lots of new faces. We got, let's see, Danny's there and Alan's there and Greenheart. That's a new one. Says that charmafavor.com, Brooks's book has a chapter about Seth Rich. Please buy and read and share. I bought 6 copies. See there? Now that's a trendsetter. Thank you very much, Greenheart. Half Q is out there. Terry's out there. Scott's out there. Too many names to mention. MG, thank you very much for your great thoughts. Yes, we'll talk a little bit more about the immune system and stuff like that. Thank you. Thank you so much for the comments. Well, there is an argument that some people on the earth are explorers and some are warriors. That's true. But, you know, if mankind can keep escaping to the wilderness. Oh, hi, Penny. Penny Kelly's out there. She says hi. If people can keep escaping to the wilderness, no war happens. That's what happens. We get to the edge, to the ocean, to the river, to the canyon, to the mountain, and somehow we figure out how to get to the next frontier. Well, there are no more frontiers now on the earth unless you want to live at the bottom of the sea. The next frontier is space, and that is quickly opening up. So let's talk a little bit about the Founding Fathers. It's been mentioned a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially during the impeachment show season 5, which is about to come to an end. The State of the Union address is going to happen on Tuesday, and then the acquittal vote is going to take place on Wednesday. And then one of two things is going to happen on Thursday. Either, or maybe both of them, now that I think about it, either the global syndicate is going to order their soldiers in the Democrat Party, which march in lockstep because they are obedient, if nothing else, to immediately begin impeaching the president again. Yeah, a second time. This time we'll go through it all over again. Yeah, of course it'll be Russia, it'll be Ukraine, it'll be something else, some other abuse of, hair products or something will be in it. And the other thing that's going to happen is I believe that the Senate Judiciary is going to start calling witnesses, and they're going to start taking apart this organization that were the front foot soldiers, at least, and maybe some of the officers in the coup attempt to unseat President Trump. You've heard in the statements by the administration that this must never be allowed to happen again. Trust me when I tell you this. If I go to the future and look back at this, it's not a pretty thing, because the precedents that are established here as the administration defends itself against this coup are going to be dangerous to future presidencies. It can't be perfect. They're going to step over the line. They're going to overreact. Some precedent is going to be set, which is going to make it dangerous to say anything against the president in the future. And that is not what this country is about. You see, the founders, they distrusted the state. They did. They were forming the state. But you remember when they finished, Franklin was asked, what kind of government do we have? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Oh, my goodness. Christine Daly has donated $25 with the kind statement, love you, Brooks. Despite my intense corruption fatigue, you give me hope. Well, that's what I'm here to do. I have to make you aware of the corruption, but I'm letting you be aware of it not for corruption's sake. There are a lot of programs and podcasts out there that bring this corruption to your mind or to the forefront, to beat you over the head with it, to make you hate government, to make you hate one party or the other. And that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is help America understand that there are remedies set into the Constitution for this kind of behavior. You see, during President Trump's impeachment trial, we hear, and I tried to bring this up before anyone else brought it up so that you would be aware of it. So when you heard the words, you would know, oh, yeah, I heard that on America Free Radio. I know exactly what he's talking about. You remember me talking about the rules of the court. I wish I had one here. I used to have the blue book, which is the federal U.S. Federal District Court rules of the court. There are not too many of them, but the major rules, what they do is they set parliamentary guidelines in the courtroom for how the prosecution and the defense can act. What kind of evidence, what kind of notice, what kind of discovery, what kind of interrogatories, all these rules are set down. The Senate is the same way, except their book is dynamic. It changes with the majority party. The majority party is the one that sets the rules for these trials. Now, they have to be careful because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So you kind of have to say, wow, if we go way overboard this time, what's to stop them, if they get back in power, which could happen, to take the same steps? Sort of like it takes 60 votes to cause cloture, to end filibuster. It used to be 51. In the Constitution, it was 51. But they left it at 60. Why? Because if you listen to the words of Orrin Hatch, this fosters regular order in the Senate. It keeps things from swinging so wildly like a pendulum back and forth. It kind of holds things to the middle and tends toward inaction rather than action. But the rules of the Senate are important, especially when it comes to impeachment. If we have become a democracy, that's a word you've heard a lot of lately from the news media and from every single one of the global syndicate soldiers, it would represent a deep betrayal of our founding fathers and of the republic which was established. They saw democracy as another form of tyranny. Now, I've always said on this program, tyranny really is, in its purest form, somebody who's not elected, in other words, you have no representation with this person, is writing laws and they're assessing taxes. Taxation without representation is the purest form of tyranny, which is exactly what the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations do to us every day. Democracy is the other side of that coin. Democracy in its pure form is mob rule. It basically says you have a bicycle and the mob wants it. And so the mob, by consensus, that's 1 over 50%, decides you need to give your bicycle up for the greater good. And there is nothing to protect you. That, my friend, is tyranny. That's tyranny. That's not corruption. That's tyranny. So we don't have a democracy when it comes to our government at a federal level. In fact, the word democracy appears nowhere in the nation's two most fundamental documents, the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. Why? Because the founders laid the ground rules for a republic, as it's written in Article 4, Section 4, which guarantees, and I quote, "to every state in this union a republican form of government," close quote. John Adams captured the essence of the difference between a democracy and a republic when he said this, and I quote, "You have rights antecedent to all earthly governments, rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws, rights derived from the great legislator of the universe," close quote. Now you contrast what the framers' vision of a republican was with that of democracy. Oh, you see a big difference. In a democracy, the majority rules either directly or through its elected representatives. As in a monarchy, the law is whatever the government determines it to be. Laws do not represent reason. They represent power. The restraint is upon the individual instead of the government. When you heard Alexandria Communist Cortez last week tell the billionaires of the world, we don't want your money, we want your power. That's exactly what she meant. James Madison in Federalist Paper number 10 wrote that in a pure democracy, there is nothing to check the inducement to sacrifice the weaker party or the obnoxious individual. The weaker party and the obnoxious individual are protected in the republic. In the last convention that we had, which was in 1787, Edmund Randolph said, in tracing these evils to their origin, every man had found it in the turbulence and foils of democracy. Alexander Hamilton agreed, saying, we are now forming a republican form of government. Liberty is found not in the extremes of democracy, but in moderate governments. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall soon shoot into a monarchy. The founding fathers distrusted the state. Were we to choose the president and vice president under a popular vote the way Elizabeth Warren wants, the outcome of the presidential races would always be decided by a few highly populated areas on the coast. California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania, which contains 134.3 million people, or 41% of our population. Presidential candidates could safely ignore everyone else. Nobody in Wyoming or Alaska or Vermont or Tennessee or Kentucky or Montana or Delaware, Rhode Island, they would never even hear a presidential speech. No one would ever buy a commercial in their state. Why? Because they only have 5.58 million Americans, only 1.7% of the U.S. population. We would no longer be a government of the people. We would be a government of the metropolitan areas. And it's Congress, not the president, that poses the greatest threat to our liberties. This is what the framers distrusted. The framers' distrust is seen in the negative language of our Bill of Rights, such as Congress. They don't say Congress will do stuff. They say Congress shall not abridge. They shall not infringe. They shall not deny. They shall not disparage and shall not be violated nor be denied. When we die, and if at our next destination we see anything like a Bill of Rights, we know that we're in hell, because a Bill of Rights in heaven would suggest that God couldn't be trusted. That's why we have those laws in place, because they knew that Congress would get out of control. That's why Article 5 was put into the Constitution, so that we, the states, could form our own convention, and we could amend the Constitution and repair breaches or improper precedents that were taken advantage of by very smart lawyers or courts or both, and twist the original structure of our government into something very much like what we saw over the last week. What we saw over the last week was a parliament. We saw a parliament. We saw Democrats getting up and lying, one after the other, after the other, after the other. We saw a major media empire lying every single hour on every single channel. We saw twisting and corrupting, and truth turned into lies over and over and over again. We even heard on the news that President Trump is called a liar because little Mikey wants to stand on a box because he's short and Donald's 6'4", and he wants to stand on a box. He wants to be on a little stage so he can be equal in stature to President Trump should he debate him. He wants to stand on a box so that he can stand in line with all the other candidates and not look shorter than Elizabeth Warren or shorter than little Bernie. He wants to stand up and be taller than everyone else, have his lectern at the same height as everyone else without it appearing to be at his breast pockets. It's a parliament. It's a game. It's a show. That's why I call it the Impeachment Show, Season 5. We want it to end. And it's going to end on Wednesday with the vote. But then it's going to start over again on Thursday unless the prosecutions begin. We've had a caller hanging on for about 10 minutes down in Michigan. Let's bring them on and find out what's on. Oh, they disappeared. They must just be listening out there. All right, I want to take the last 6 minutes of this hour. I want to talk about the national slave score. Speaking of score, it's 20-10 San Francisco. The national slave score, what is that? I'm not talking about China. I could talk about China, but I'm not. Your FICO score is a mysterious slave rating the credit bureau uses to evaluate your worth in society. They know everything about you. They know when you were last overdrawn. They know the brand of foods you eat. They know whether you smoke, whether you watch pornography, whether you drive too fast. They know what books you read, what websites over which you linger, let alone click on. And they know your payment history. Yes, your payments. Those are important. In fact, it is not as important that you make them as it is that you have them. In order to reach the highest levels of slave rating, you must be in debt at all times. Not too much, not too little, and God forbid you be debt-free. The powers of heaven are arrayed against those people who actually live within their means and pay as they go. These are scored so badly that they often do not even resolve. No slave score means that technically you don't even exist. Many leading dating sites will reveal your credit score as part of your advanced profile. 67% of women and 47% of men will not date a person who has a bad credit score. Bandit, it appears. Bandits are not one of the bad girl traits that men like. And now you know it was only a matter of time that your voting record and your political affiliation is going to become part of your slave score. Republicans tried to save you. But Democrats in the House of Representatives voted Wednesday of this week against an amendment to a proposed bill that would prevent the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the folks down at Slave Score headquarters, from forcing credit reporting agencies to evaluate Americans based on political opinions or religious beliefs. By the way, without this amendment, Republicans warn, and I do too, the powerful people down at the Slave Score headquarters would have the legal authority to make nearly any criteria mandatory for a private credit evaluation company to take into consideration, paving the way for a system in which the federal government has the power to assign numerical scores to individuals based on their loyalty to a certain political party. Membership in civil society groups like the NRA or AMAC that the government approves or disapproves of, or other private behaviors. The system, they say, would mirror the newly minted social credit system in place in China, which bans citizens from key social services like public transportation if they lose too many points, behaving in a way the Communist Party disapproves of. The Slave Score headquarters, the brainchild of Senator Elizabeth Warren, is an executive agency that does not answer to the presidency, making it accountable to anyone but its head. The constitutionality of giving an unelected body the power to impose its demands on private individuals and corporations has been the subject of extensive debate, and the unique power given to the Credit Bureau director triggered an aggressive fight for the seat after the founding director, Richard Cordray, who was chosen by President Barack Obama, resigned. Republicans tried on Wednesday to amend the 1970 Fair Credit Reporting Act in light of the extensive corruption at the Bureau. They failed because Democrats control Congress. The amendment would have been tacked onto Representative Ariana Presley. By the way, have you seen her public pictures lately? Oh my gosh. I can't describe it. You need to see it for yourself. The Student Borrower Credit Improvement Act, which grants the Bureau power to order private credit evaluation companies not to take into account what Presley and her fellow Democrats consider unfair criteria. Having bad credit could keep an American from buying a car or home, limiting their economic potential, and the Presley bill in particular prevents unexpected medical expenses or unpaid student loans from harming a person's credit. Yeah, I paid my student loan back on time, Ms. Presley, and I think people that have loans today should do the same. I paid my loans off. Why should I pay their loans off too? Don't go away. We'll come back at the bottom of the hour with more X Squared Radio. This has been a very enlightening evening. We're going to take this in a little direction when we get back. Thank you. Thank you so much, Christine Daly, for that kind contribution. Top chat. I love you too. Thank you all for being there. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Discover the extraordinary powers of intuitive healing with pain transmutation, a method of holistic healing for the human soul, body, mind, and emotions. If you are looking for answers and a deep understanding of how to help yourself and the people around you to live a happier, healthier life, this is the right place for you. Learn how to read your soul's history in the Akashic records. Remove negative energy attachments from your astral body and start the process of inner and outer pain transmutation. Join Pain Transmutation Community to get started on the path of intuitive healing. Change your energetic state, manifest new and exciting experiences, re-energize your life, and build inspiring connections with others in our community.
Hey folks, guess what the #1 phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
True initiation is an inward journey. It's a spiritual path that is totally inward. It has nothing to do with anything external to you.
I want to determine if the Grand Architect is indeed what I believe it to be, which is the artificial intelligence.
The initiatory path is one of self-discovery and self-revealing. It's not a journey that someone can hold your hand through.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through the steps of initiation. Remember, you are divinity.
Step Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Geo. Fridays and Saturdays, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR Frequency Radio.
Hey, we're so glad you're here with us. We're halfway through tonight. Super Bowl is interesting. I wish I could hear the commercials because they look just funny as can be. Tied again all through everything. He's dead now. But thanks to the reporting of America Free Radio and other outlets, the truth is getting out there about who planned the massacre in Kiev, Ukraine. In a dramatic development in the trial in Kiev of several Berkut police officers accused of shooting civilians in the Maidan demonstrations in February of 2014, the defense has produced 2 Georgians who confirmed that the murders were committed by foreign snipers, foreign to Ukraine. At least 50 of them, by the way, operating in teams. The 2 Georgians, Alexander Revashvili and Koba Nergadze, have agreed to testify by video from Tbilisi, if permitted, as they feared for their lives if brought to Kiev. Here's what the defense lawyers stated. The eyewitnesses said that they saw with their own eyes a group of people who had received weapons and cartridges and who would deliver fire afterwards from the building of the Conservatory. Nergadze also saw snipers at the roof of the Hotel Ukraine. They know the individuals personally. Besides, they know the organizers and clients and are ready to give their names as well as the names of their perpetrators. Close quote. Now you can see why they're in fear for their lives. Because what exactly do they mean? Foreign snipers, exactly. Victoria Nuland has been caught on tape telling Ukrainian officials that no one in the world will pay any attention to the revolt until at least 100 people are killed. They must die in one killing event in order for the world press to pay any attention. In other words, the global elite media empire needs to have a sacrifice in order to pay attention. It is she that laid out the plans for sending CIA operatives into the crowd of protesters to lead them with their makeshift shields into the killing zone. It was then that the snipers cut them down in the streets on camera while the CIA operative sneaks out of the line of fire. Victoria Nuland might as well have pulled the trigger herself. This may be exactly why there were no witnesses called at the Trump impeachment trial. Think about it. Let it sit for a second. In all, about 50 mercenaries arrived in Kiev then, and they were involved in the events on the Maidan afterwards and fired at the protesters on February 20th. Goroshinsky went on. The mercenaries split into groups of 10 men each and were dispatched to different spots from where they delivered fire. Each of them, the mercenaries, received $5,000 for the job done, he said. In other words, these people had been brought to Kiev with a well-specified task to create a conflict. This dramatic and explosive evidence was first brought to light by the Italian journalist Gian Michelesen on November 16th in an article in the Italian journal Giornale, and is again brought to the world's attention by a lawyer with some courage picking up on that report and speaking with the witness himself. These witnesses stated to Gian Michelesen, even more explosively, that the American army was directly involved in the murders. Let that sink in just for a second, because I'm making a point here. I understand this is controversial. I understand this is highly provocative. But you must understand there is a reason why this was shut down and witnesses were not called in the Senate. Because this was going to come out. This, besides the money laundering, is why Ukraine is such an explosive thing, and it must be covered up at all costs. The clear objective of the Maidan massacre in Kiev on February 20th, 2014 was to sow chaos and to reap the fall of the democratically elected pro-Russian Yanukovych government. More than 100 innocent protesters were executed in the streets by rooftop snipers for no other reason than to destroy a government, the NATO powers, specifically the United States and Germany, I would say the Obama administration and the former Clinton State Department and now the Kerry State Department. They wanted this NATO debt to be put in place over Ukraine. They did not want Putin to step in and loan this money. Yanukovych refused to sign the loans the EU had produced and instead chose to accept financial aid from Putin. John McCain led the charge to replace Ukraine's alliance to Russia with American and German economic expansion. In other words, it was about money, and it was about making of money. Billions of dollars were at stake. Yanukovych signing the deal with Putin cut off that money. The Western media and leaders were directed to blame the Yanukovych government for the killings during the Maidan demonstrations. But more evidence has become available lately. It indicates that the massacre in Kiev of police and civilians, which led to the escalation of protests, leading to the overthrow of the Yanukovych government and the current level of corruption with Burisma and Biden and all that, it was the work of snipers working on the orders of Victoria Nuland and her NATO controllers inside the Ukraine, using the protests as a cover for a coup. And this is exactly the same criminal operation trying to remove President Trump from office. The same people. One of the snipers already admitted to this in February of 2015, thereby confirming what had become common knowledge just a few days after the massacre in Kiev, because we aired it right here on this program. And in a secretly recorded telephone call, the Estonian Foreign Minister, Urmas Paet, reported to the EU head of foreign policy, Catherine Ashton, in early March of 2014, in the middle of the Obama administration, that there was widespread suspicion that someone from the new coalition in Kiev government may have ordered the sniper murders. In February of 2016, 3 months before Trump would become the nominee for the Republican Party, Maidan activist Ivan Bubinchik confessed that in the course of the massacre, he had shot Ukrainian police officers. Bubinchik confirmed that in a film that gained wide attention. In September of 2015, in the 2015 issue of Oriental Review, Dr. Ivan Kachanovsky at the University of Ottawa published a devastating paper on the Maidan killings, setting out in extensive detail, because he analyzed all the film, all the angles, all the timing of the films. He was able to kind of get a 3D picture of everything that was going on in that protest. It looked kind of chaotic the way the press was playing it, but it wasn't just the press playing it. What was also available was lots and lots and lots of social media. Lots of social media had posted recordings from this street corner, that street corner, this building, that window. He was able to put these things together, and he was able to align the rifle shots. He was able to put these things together, and he mapped it all out in extensive detail. And the conclusive, inescapable evidence was that it was a false flag operation, and that members of the present Kiev regime, including Poroshenko himself, were involved in the murders, not the government forces. His paper contains all you need to know, and I highly recommend it. And I will put a link to that in my notes. But I'll quote, "The paper analyzes a large amount of evidence from different publicly available sources concerning this massacre and killings of specific protesters. This academic investigation concludes that the massacre was a false flag operation which was rationally planned and carried out with the goal of the overthrow of the government and seizure of power," which is exactly what happened. Well, guess what? Now we have new evidence. November of this year, an article came out in the Journal. I told you about that article. On the 18th of February, they were given weapons, and 2 of them took up positions at the Hotel Ukraina, overlooking Maidan Square, where the 3rd was in position in the conservatory. When these people were led into the streets by CIA operatives, these innocents holding shields over their heads like this, just metal shields, thinking maybe they're going to protect themselves against rocks or sticks or whatever being thrown, they moved them into position, and the shooters just wiped them out, just killed them in cold blood. And this is what happened. Another stated, let's see here, because what we want to know is they made a mention that the American Army was involved. This American that was involved, Brian Christopher Boyinger, a former soldier, a sniper from the 101st Airborne Division, he was the one who gave us orders. Questions naturally arise on how this former American soldier entered the country and took command of a murderous sniper unit, and it is highly probable that the word former was used to give the Americans plausible deniability if their men were found out, as has now occurred. Do you want to know why witnesses could not be allowed in the Trump impeachment trial? Do you want to know why Rubio and the other gang of 8 senators could not allow that box to be opened? No one can seriously doubt that his presence was known to the U.S. ambassador in Kiev, Jeffrey Pyatt, who, according to then Vice President Joe Biden, was in hourly contact with Andriy Parubly, the Ukrainian fascist who was in charge of self-defense units made of heavily armed fascist thugs at Maidan. According to the Italian report, Parubly was going in and out of the Hotel Ukraina from where many shots were fired and was aware of the presence of the American soldier, so the American ambassador must have been aware of his and his government. Even though numerous FOIA requests have been made The Americans have yet to explain Boyinger's presence or what rank he held in the U.S. Army. Parubli's role in the events has never been explained either, but Poroshenko appointed this mass murderer as the head of Ukraine's security and intelligence forces after the coup. Victoria Nuland, Miss Yovanovitch, and most likely even Alexander Vindman knew him and worked with him. The massacre at Maidan, therefore, is revealed to be a carefully planned military operation organized in detail with teams of snipers brought in from various NATO allied countries, unknown to each other, but organized on arrival, given orders and agreements and assignments, and each sniper team being assigned spotters to help in their deadly work. You recall during the quote-unquote testimony, witness testimony during the Democrats' dungeon event when it was finally brought out in public. You remember Yovanovitch. You remember Fiona Hill. You remember the other, quote, witnesses. Do you remember the tone of their voice when they talked about Russia? Do you remember the hatred they had for Russia? Do you remember the vehemence with which they objected to Ukraine being involved in any of the corruption? That all of the corruption was Russian. Everything was pointed at Russia. Now you know why. When Yanukovych made his deal with Putin instead of the EU, this infuriated the elites in the ambassador corps. And they wanted to do whatever it took to break that alliance between Yanukovych and Putin. And that's what they did. That's why the riots were perpetrated. It was a false flag, but it was designed to accomplish an end. And John McCain was involved. He may have actually been one of the organizers of it, and there are pictures to prove it. But he's dead. For now, it is clear that the entire justification of the Kiev regime for its existence, that it got rid of Yanukovych to get rid of killers, is now proved to be a cover for the fact that it is the very members of the present Kiev regime who were complicit in the killings and directed them. And I'm talking about Poroshenko. This had to be replaced, and that's why it was so important for Zelensky to come in. And when Zelensky came in and made contact with President Trump, and President Trump said, you know, we've had a lot of corruption. You should do us a favor and pick up those investigations and find out where they lead. And that's exactly what he is doing. Nobody has the power to stop these people. We just went through the impeachment show season 5. You've already heard listeners tonight talk about the fatigue that they feel. I love these listeners more than you know. And for Christine Daly to say, despite my intense corruption fatigue, you give me hope. That corruption fatigue comes from what we see on TV. It doesn't come from radio programs like this where we're exposing it. It comes when we watch it on TV and we see the officials that work in the global syndicate lie. When we see James Comey lie. When we see Clapper and Brennan and Rice lie. When we see Rhodes and Strzok and Page and McCabe, we see them get away with it. We see Clinton get away with it. We see Kerry get away with it. We see the Bidens get away with it. With Warren and Booker. And we see anchor babies coming into this country, Kamala Harris, get away with it. It wears us out. It wears us down. It makes us lose our faith in the rule of law. And if we lose our faith in the rule of law, we begin to lose our faith in America. Not that we have lost our faith in American ideals. No, we love them. We love our inalienable rights. We love being American. But we're losing our faith in America because no one has the power to stop them except you. You have the power to stop them. except for Donald Trump. He has the power to stop them. And the Americans who still believe in the rule of law for everyone, they have the power to stop them. And our time is coming in November. So you remember in November, and we can fix this. All right, let's change track just a little bit. Just a little respite here. To infinity and beyond, a pair of Harvard astrophysicists have proposed a wild theory. We love wild theories, don't we? Of how life might have spread through the universe. Now, I want you to imagine this. Millions or billions of years ago, back when the solar system was more crowded, a giant comet grazed the outer reaches of our atmosphere. It was moving fast, several tens of miles above the Earth's surface, too high to burn up as a fireball, but low enough that the atmosphere slowed it down a little bit. Extremely hardy microbes were floating up there in its path. And some of those bugs survived the collision with the ball of ice. These microbes ended up embedded deep within the comet's porous surface, protecting them from radiation of deep space as the comet rocketed away from Earth and eventually out of the solar system entirely. Tens of thousands, maybe millions of years passed before the comet ended up in another solar system with habitable planets. Eventually, the object crashed into one of those planets, depositing the microbes, a few of them still living, and they set up a new outpost for earthly life in the universe called panspermism, and it happens probably to us as well. Other forms of life have come here, and this is a great planet that's capable of supporting life. Well, it looks like the red team has come back. The Chiefs are ahead 24-20. And 2 minutes and 39 seconds left in the fourth quarter. By the way, I predicted the Chiefs by 3. I said 27-24. And it's probably not going to be that score. But interesting game. But I do predict the red team is going to win. Just like it's going to in November, the red team is going to win. While the study's concept may be far-fetched, humanity is constantly confronted with seeming impossibilities like Earth going around the sun. Who would have believed such a thing? Quantum physics. Seriously? Yeah. Or bacteria, hitching a ride into the galaxy aboard a comet. It's all going to turn out to be true. And there might be reason to suspect that it could be possible. A series of experiments using small rockets in the 1970s, we did find colonies of bacteria in the upper atmosphere. And comets really do enter and leave our solar system from time to time. It's a brand new field of science. I think we probably have been invaded with various life forms. The interesting thing about it is, though, that the genetics use the same code. Maybe rearranged differently, but it's the same basic code. Sort of like when God was asking Adam about Eve. She's nice, and you named all the animals, so you might as well name her. What are you going to call her? Eve. Oh. Why Eve? Because she's the mother of all living. And God said, that is correct, because she is the mother of all living. Very interesting interchange, don't you think? Especially when you consider that, genetically speaking, we're not all that much different than a cabbage. I mean, we're not a cabbage, but our genetic code exists in cabbage. Or, to put it another way, the cabbage's genetic code exists in us. Interesting, huh? All right, let's change gears again. Get ready. Breaking the human trafficking industry. This is brand spanking new. It's not being received like you might think. You'd think, oh boy, this is great news. We can save the kids and stop this debauchery. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And a couple of days ago, President Donald Trump signed an executive order expanding his domestic policy with a new position solely focused on combating human trafficking. He had to use an executive order because he cannot get Congress to do this. Congress is busy doing other things. The president officially announced the new position during a White House summit on the topic, which was organized by his daughter, Ivanka Trump. My administration is putting unprecedented pressure on traffickers at home and abroad, Trump said during the event, adding, "We have signed more legislation on human trafficking than any other administration has ever even thought about." Oh, yes. Many thousands of child predators have been arrested, and many of them are famous in Hollywood. Many of them are rich, like Bronfman, and the best is yet to come. While touting his administration's success and authorizing over $400 million to fight the issue, he said the internet was the main portal for human traffickers to find their victims, and it is. It is people posting pictures of their kids on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and all that stuff. President Donald Trump plans to expand the White House Domestic Policy Office by appointing an individual to focus exclusively on combating human trafficking, the Associated Press has learned. Now, I'm not for, another bureaucracy, another agency, another department. But Trump is expected to create the position by executive order Friday of this coming week. And we're going to see what happens. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Sharonism Raw with Sharon and Missa, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo, The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray, Ironworks with Josh Corey, The Kev Baker Show, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
This time tomorrow night, Iowa Democrats will be caucusing. I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News. Tonight, though, some of the candidates running for president turned Super Bowl watch parties into campaign events. Bernie Sanders supporters gathered at a sports bar in Des Moines to meet him and watch Kansas City and San Francisco square off. Right now, the Niners lead 13-10 in the third quarter.
The candidates have had a steady schedule of town halls, meet and greets, and other events in the run-up, and the first official contest of the 2020 presidential race is finally here.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers in Des Moines. 4 U.S. senators running for president have to head back to Washington. Their attendance required for tomorrow's closing arguments at President Trump's impeachment trial. The president's campaign shelling out about $11 million for 2 30-second ads airing during the Super Bowl. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg spending the same amount for one 60-second spot. The president claiming Bloomberg
wants $1 for the debates. Why should he be entitled to that? Really? Then does that mean everyone else gets $1?
President Trump interviewed by Fox's Sean Hannity in the traditional Super Bowl pregame interview. He also called his fellow billionaire Little Mike, called him Mini Mike at rallies. Bloomberg calling the president a pathological liar.
I think Donald Trump knows that I can beat him, and that's why he comes back with those kinds of comments.
A 9th confirmed case of coronavirus in this country. A woman who traveled to the San Francisco Bay Area. 2 university students in Ohio suspected cases, along with a man in New York City. This as China reports another 57 deaths since yesterday. The Shanghai index down nearly 9% on the news. America's listening to Fox News.
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Just to give you a little bit better update than what you got in the news, it's 24-20, Kansas City. And there's 1 minute and 20 seconds left in the fourth quarter. So that could be. I think the red team is going to win. Yeah, I know. By the way, thanks so much for the many great chats. Greenheart, thank you very much for the prayers. Half Q, Matrix, Scott, Truth Frequency News is out there. Wow. Thanks for the compliment. Yes, over 60 people have been in the chat room consistently all night tonight. Considering it's Super Bowl Sunday, I am blown away. Thank you so much. Yes, I think most of us cried the first time we fell down, MG. But then we get back up and we keep going. And if you just look around, you'll see someone like me there to help you get back up. It's easy when you think about having to help people, how easy it is to walk away. Was at Trump Tower a couple of weeks ago, and I came down the escalator a couple times just to feel what it was like. And I went all the way to the top, where the escalator ends. It kind of ends up there on the garden level before you top out in the bottom part of the Trump Tower there. And I thought to myself, living in this building, this is your home, is kind of a different lifestyle than having a yard with a dog and, a fence and a pond or a tree with a tire swing on it. But life is what it is, and Donald Trump reached a point in his life. He'd been interviewed many times. I watched interviews with him going all the way back to the days when he was in his late 30s. Always interviewed by famous people, Oprah and Rona and on, different people. And they always ask him the same questions. What's it like to be rich? And what about, whose suit do you wear? And are you thinking about running for president? And every time he said the same thing. No, I don't think that I would. It's too mean in Washington. It's just too mean. They're too nasty. I don't think that I would run for president. No. But as the years went on and he kept getting asked that question, he kind of sneak in. But I only if I had to. If I had to, then I would run. And then in 2015, it became apparent as the DNC was manipulated and taken over. It was basically a hostile takeover when the Hillary Victory Fund began sucking all the money out of all 50 states, political contributions, and pulling it into one fund in Washington and doling it out to only those people that supported her. It became apparent what was going to happen to the country. And I imagine that one evening, Donald Trump got on that elevator. Instead of punching the down button from the 25th floor, he pushed the up button. And he went up to the heliport up on the top of that building by himself, walked out without a tie on to look up at the stars at the top of New York City. And then in his own way, he looked up and said, you know, I have succeeded. I've made everything. I'm healthy. I'm smart. I'm successful. I have a beautiful wife, a beautiful son. I got great kids. I got great grandkids. I have clubs all over the world, more than 500 businesses with more than 10,000 employees. By all accounts, I'm a successful man. But it has fallen to my lap, this mantle, and I would rather the cup be taken away from me. But if you want me to, I'll run for president, and I'll do what I can to save this country. And I thought to myself as I was coming down that escalator, what it was like, Donald Trump, facing those cameras in a different way, not as a billionaire, not as a philanthropist, not as an entertainer, not as an architect or a building designer, but as a candidate for the president of the United States. A new kind of nervousness, a new kind of apprehension. Because as he was going down that escalator, everything he had, everything he had built, everything he had accumulated, both physical and spiritual, was left at the top of that escalator. He left it all. He left his empire. He left his income. He left everything that he had built his entire life at the top of that escalator. And he came down that escalator for us, not for him. He already had everything. He gave it all up for us. And that kind of humbled me as I was coming down that escalator. That he could never go back to that life. He could never, ever go back to playing golf for fun, to being with celebrities and important people around the world, shaking hands and quietly paying off people's mortgages who are in need, quietly helping people who have terminal illnesses. Now he's doing greater things. I am here because of his efforts. Many people are here because of the right to try new drugs, because of the second chance to get out of prison and start over again, because of the moving agencies, departments, bureaus, administrations, rules, regulations, taxes, fines, barriers out of the way of entrepreneurs. Many things are beginning to move, and the entire world is now rebelling against the globalists. All of this because of the leadership that is being fed through Donald Trump. I almost said the leadership of Donald Trump, but that's not quite exactly true now, is it? We know that God has always used flawed men to accomplish his goals. And we know that the goals that President Trump is accomplishing are not being appreciated by some people in the global syndicate. Some groups actually criticized this human trafficking summit. Other groups that have been invited said they will not attend. You know why? I can tell you that child trafficking is not new. It has been around since the dawn of time. The Dark Lord enlists his followers and requires of them an oath, a covenant. and a ritual that involves the defiling and possible sacrifice of innocent life. The priests of Baal have been doing this forever, prosecuting this heinous practice cuts right at the heart of evil in this world. The evil of the religion of peace, the evil of the royals, and the evil of the ruling elite who consume every living thing on the world, all are addicted to molesting children. Human trafficking is worse than it ever has been before, President Trump said. And that's because maybe the internet. He outlined initiatives that his administration has done thus far, including the Department of Justice shutting down certain websites found to be associated with groups accused of running human trafficking rings. He added, "My administration is fighting these monsters, persecuting them, and prosecuting them." The White House event put together in celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act legislation signed in 2000 by former President Bill Clinton and later adopted by former President Barack Obama and Trump, welcomed lawmakers and officials who have spearheaded initiatives to fight against human trafficking, including Ambassador Callista Gingrich and Texas Representative Michael McCall. We are pleased to be among those honoring the 20th anniversary of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, bipartisan legislation that serves as the foundation of today's fight to eradicate the sexual exploitation of youth. And yet, we see it everywhere. We see it in television commercials. We see it in sitcoms. We see it in the Department of Education. We see it in our schools, local and national. Domestic minor sex trafficking is a national epidemic. It has no party affiliation because it's driven by the global syndicate. In fact, it is a cause that has benefited greatly from bipartisan support for the last 2 decades. But to no avail, hundreds of thousands of children still turn up missing. And the most disaffected are not the ones usually from stable homes. They're the ones from broken homes. They're the ones from unstable homes. They're the runaways. They're the refugees. They're the migrants. These are the ones that are victimized. Children are taken on a regular basis and victimized over and over and over again. The groups that are trying to stop them were invited, and many of them did not come. Ivanka Trump also brought up survivors to the podium to speak, many of whom have become national speakers for the cause. In the days leading up to the summit, some anti-trafficking groups said they declined invitations to the event, citing nothing except opposition to Trump. Groups such as Polaris Project. Let me say that again. The name is Polaris Project. It's a nonprofit that runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And they didn't want their attendance to be misconstrued as supporting Trump in any way. And you know what? That tells me everything I want to know about this organization. At this highly politicized moment in our nation, we were concerned that our attendance at this summit might be misconstrued as taking a political side, and so we chose not to attend. Polaris remains committed to working, and I want you to listen closely to these words, because this is word salad. Polaris remains committed to working with all parties on all issues related to human trafficking, including helping everyone in a position to make change understand how certain immigration and refugee policies and rhetoric contribute to sex and labor trafficking and make it less likely that victims and survivors feel safe seeking help. Translation: anybody that opposes sanctuary cities is an enemy of ours. You see? The greatest lies contain truth. If I took the time to dissect this official statement for you, it would make you sick. Avoid Polaris Project like the plague it is. If anyone asks you for money to support the Polaris Project, tell them no. By the way, they come here. They knock on our door. Yes, we're here to solicit contributions to stop the trafficking of children. Really? What organization are you with? Polaris Project. Sorry. We're going to give another way. A large portion of victims in the United States are immigrants, simply because these children do not have the protection of a home. They're stressed, they're hungry, they're emotionally damaged from abuse and violence. It naturally makes them vulnerable to predators. And just remember, it is Michael Bloomberg's money that has put these people at risk. It is his money and his organization, Pueblos Sin Fronteras, that has caused this forced migration that feeds the victims to the cartels and the addicts who need to rape and kill children. The groups that boycotted the event are the ones who support and facilitate the networks that consume thousands of children every month. It is worth billions to the elite. The Department of Justice has been given a $77 million budget to support victims of human trafficking, according to fiscal 2020 budget numbers. In President Trump's executive order, because he could get nothing like this passed through the Democrat Congress, Trump also called for a $4 million increase in funding toward investigating and prosecuting human trafficking in the U.S., in addition to a proposed increase in grant funding for state and local efforts, according to a White House official. Do you know what this means? It means that when a human trafficker is arrested and the children are freed, or the child pornography is exposed, they grab his phone. They grab his phone because on his phone, not only are the pictures, but they're the phone numbers and the contacts of all the people in his network with whom they share these experiences. The people that recruit the children, the people to whom he pays the money to have access to the kids. All of this is on his phone. It takes money. It takes money for them to investigate this, for them to build the database, because once they get his phone, they go to those numbers and they get other phones and they get other records, and it grows and grows and grows, and thousands upon thousands of people have been arrested. And some of them are very famous. Bronfman, Mack, others throughout Hollywood and leadership, and it's headed for Washington. It is headed for Washington, and you better be ready, because Trump is not going to hold back. Once his reelection is finished, he's going to go after these people with a vengeance. And I'm with you. I don't care. I don't care if all 435 congressmen and 100 senators are implicated and they all go to jail. You know what? By noon tomorrow, I can find 535 good Americans to take their place that have never molested a child. That's the way I feel about it. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children praised it. They said, "We appreciate having a seat at the table for this important discussion." John F. Clark, president and CEO of the center, said Thursday of this week in a statement to ABC News, "The issue of child sex trafficking is a crucial concern of ours. We believe it is essential to engage with all our partners in the federal government, Congress, and the judiciary, as well as law enforcement and nonprofit partners, to work together to prevent children from being sold for sex and help recover and provide services for victims. You see the difference between Mr. Clark's statement and the statement made by Polaris? Polaris is more concerned with political appearances, and Clark is more concerned with saving the victims, as am I. So I expect to see some more hotlines come up. I expect to see other ways of notifying the authorities that some child is being trafficked. Keep your eyes peeled at malls, Walmarts, city parks, especially diners and fast food restaurants. If you're homeless or you're a person that has escaped, one of the first places that you go is a place to find something to eat, a public place, a Hardee's, a Burger King, a McDonald's, someplace that keep your eyes open. You see children by themselves, young people by themselves at these locations. Make sure that you watch them and make sure that you see if they're being victimized or not. Watch who picks them up. Watch who they get out of cars with. Just keep your eyes open. This is something that needs to be brought to an end, and we're the ones to be able to do it. All right, let's change gears a little bit. We got about a little over half an hour left. It looks like Kansas City won the Super Bowl, as predicted here on this radio program. And I'm glad to see it. You know, nobody likes a winner when it comes to the Super Bowl. I'm joking. I just think that Kansas City and Mahone, they deserved it. They worked hard for it. They have great stats. They have great heart. And not that I have anything against Jimmy. I think Jimmy's, I mean, come on. The guy's an Italian god playing football. He's going to be there. He'll be there next year. You'll see. Let's talk a little bit about climate change. I love these discussions on climate change. You know, the cold snaps caused by the sun entering a natural hibernation threaten to trigger food shortages as temperatures slump across the planet. Yes. I've seen the commercials too, all about global warming and how evil carbon is. By the way, let me consume a little bit more carbon here. Good carbon. Earth, according to mathematicians, not climatologists, because, well, there's no money in it. Mathematicians don't need money. Earth is bracing for a solar minimum. It's a quiet period in which the sun, it just fires less energy. It puts out less coronal mass ejections, less sunspots, less particles come to Earth and load up our atmosphere. And according to NASA, the sun is going to reach its lowest activity in over 200 years this year. And this could cause average temperatures to drop as much as 1 degree C in a cold spell lasting maybe a year or more. It could be more. And I have to tell you that once we cross that threshold of 1 degree centigrade, 1.5 degrees centigrade, you begin to move the farm belt south. Right now, the farm belt goes well up into Canada. But if you move the farm belt south a couple hundred miles or 250 miles, you begin to push the food producing closer to the equator. What you end up doing is shrinking the amount of land. Just take a look at the globe. I wish I had one here. I could put it up and show you. But if you look at where the equator is around the planet, around the waistband of the planet, a wide waistband, kind of like mine, you'll notice that there's not much land there. It's the skinny part of all the continents, right? It's the Yucatan. It's the area north of Africa. That equator, it doesn't really cover a lot of land mass, which means that we're not going to be able to grow as much food as we grow now. It means that those areas are going to become more highly valued. Now, it might not sound like much, but a whole degree centigrade is very significant for global average temperatures. The sun approaching this hibernation period, Professor Zarkova, who has published multiple scientific papers on solar minimums, told The Sun. Less sunspots will be formed on the solar surface, and thus less energy and radiation will be emitted toward planets and the Earth. Solar minimums, they occur once every 11 years because the pole shifts back and forth on the sun every 11 years. 2020's minimum promises to be an especially chilly one. Professor Zarkova warned icy spells and wet summers could persist until solar activity picks up again in the year 2053. And it's 33 years from now. She listed recent unusual chills in Canada and Iceland. And by the way, this last February 2019, the coldest February in history in Los Angeles. It was the first February ever recorded that the temperature did not get over 70 degrees. I'm just telling you, the data is there. The reduction in temperature will result in colder weathers on Earth, wet and cold summers, cold and wet winters. We will possibly get big frosts, as is happening now in Canada, where they see temperatures of minus 50 degrees. And that's because it marks the start of a rare event known as a grand solar minimum. The last one we had was the Maunder minimum. It goes way, way back into the 1800s. A new NASA study says that an increase in Antarctic snow accumulation that began 10,000 years ago is currently adding enough ice to the continent to outweigh the increased losses from its thinning glaciers. So it's not just the Arctic, it's also the Antarctic. According to the new analysis of satellite data, the Antarctic sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice a year from 1992 to 2001. That net gain slowed to 82 billion tons of ice per year between 2003 and 2008. We're essentially in agreement with other studies that show an increase in ice discharge in the Antarctic Peninsula and the Thwaites and Pine Island region of West Antarctica. Scientists calculate how much the ice sheet is growing or shrinking from the changes in surface height that are measured by the satellite altimeters. In locations where the amount of new snowfall accumulating on an ice sheet is not equal to the ice flow downward and outward to the ocean, the surface height changes and the ice sheet mass grows or shrinks. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. And I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at naturesyouth.com. Naturesyouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
More than a dozen astronauts have officially reported UFOs. Hundreds of hours of UFO footage were filmed by astronauts aboard the space shuttle. Many of these UFOs can only be seen in ultraviolet light. Retired former Apollo astronauts and cosmonauts now tell their stories of their own personal UFO encounters.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
Can't tell you how much it means to me to have you all there. Sitting behind this microphone, sometimes you feel kind of lonely, but then you look out there and see so many people in the YouTube chat room, and it enlightens me. It makes me feel warm, and it makes me able to face the week again. I have hope when I see this, and I'm glad that I'm reaching out to you and that you're reaching out to others and sharing this wonderful word. As we become one in purpose, we share our feelings with one another, our truth with one another. We become aware of the forces that are at work in the world. It's sometimes easy to put our heads down and put our shoulders against the wheel and just keep pushing, toward the day when we start drawing our own 401k. It's easy to do, to say, well, it's someone else's problem. It's someone else's burden. I'm too busy working. I can't afford to pay attention. I can't afford to divert my intention anywhere else except what I'm focused on. But I can tell you from experience, riding down the road, eating cookies and drinking milk one day and get run over by a car on my motorcycle, and I'm gone. And then I'm back. And I recall laying on the pavement as the police officer was taking the helmet off my head, asking me questions, some of which I was able to answer. How easy it was, how painless it was, and how quick it was to leave this world. And the only regret, I think, that I felt at that moment were the things left unfinished. The loves I did not have, the goals I didn't reach, the empire I tried to build for my progeny, for my kids and my grandchildren, wasn't done. It wasn't finished. But, that's the way I came into this world. There was no inheritance. There were no parents. There were no grandparents. There was no There was no help with college education. There were no loans. There was no home, nothing like that. You just leave, and it's you, and you die or you live, and it's entirely up to you and no one else. You're 100% responsible for your life condition. Not everybody experiences that. They have family and they have spouses and brothers and sisters that help them along the way. And I have no envy for that, no jealousy of that. I think it's a great gift. But I think if you overcome things like a handicap, or you overcome a weakness, or you overcome some disadvantage that you have, like me, I mean, I was born, white. That's a big disadvantage these days. Many of us look at ourselves and we say, I'm not handsome, I'm not fast, not particularly strong, or have a lot of endurance, or, other than a few small things, not much talent, really. And yet, all of us have the inalienable right to succeed, to be whatever it is we want to be, to do whatever it is we want to do. Now, it means that for some of us, the ladder's a little bit longer to get to the same altitude. But if you look at life like the ladder instead of the loft, a lot of us look at life like the loft. The ladder's just a way to get to the loft. And once you're in the loft, then hey, everything's cool, right? Sit around, you chill, you look over the edge every now and then, but you're there. No, that's not what life is about. I hate to tell you that. Life is not about park benches. Life is not about retirement. Life is not about the pinnacle. If I had my choice of anyone in the world to have a couple of hours with, a dinner and then an after dinner conversation, you know who it would be? It would be Donald Trump. You know why? Because I would want to know what was the story. I mean, the night before you came down that escalator, you could have said, you know what? I've looked at it. I've weighed at it. It's not worth it. I got 10, 15 good years left in me. I have a beautiful wife. I have an 11-year-old son. I want to see my son get through college and have kids, and, before I go. I built all of this for them so they could carry it on. And you know what? It's just too much of a sacrifice. I think the world's going to hell, and it's not up to me to save it. It's up to you to save it. So I've made mine, and now you can have yours. Or to say, that's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life, where much is given, much is expected. Where you have an ability or a talent, maybe it's just a seedling. Maybe it's just a little sprout that says, hey, this could become a limb if I exercise it. I mean, look at Patrick Mahone tonight. Throwing a football and running around on the grass. He just won the football game of a lifetime. He just has the most joyous moment in his life. And he's rich. He's going to be rich for the rest of his life. Endorsements that come from this. He's a good kid. He's probably one of the best people to ever play the game. It's a small aspect of life. The point I'm trying to make is it's the path that's important, not the loft. It's not the park bench. It's not the grassy knoll where you stop for a while and don't continue with life. You're just as alive at that moment as I was laying on that pavement in front of that car. You're not. You're only alive when you're on the path. Step on the path, and somewhere in that timeline, you're already at your destination. All you're experiencing in real time are the moments that you imagined from the future when you put that goal in. You put that goal out there in the future, and then you came back to the past, which is I was going to call it now, but we don't even really know what now is. I don't know how fast it moves through the universe and couldn't locate it if I did. I don't even know if now exists, because now is like, well, I mean, not now because that was then. Okay, like right now. Oh, I mean, even that's gone. You see, now is not the target. Now is the freaking park bench. You need to focus on moments. Moments are much larger, multi-dimensional consideration. And you can go back to them over and over again. Once you're in the future, you can go back to the past and you can go through those moments again and again, and you can reflect and you can fill in the stochastic nature of that hologram and really make it rich. Because right at the moment when you're going through it, you're trying to listen to all the music. You're trying to absorb all the tastes and the smells and the textures and the love and the emotion and the connection. But you miss it because you're focused on something else. You know, you're focused on the sex, or you're focused on the delicious meal, or you're focused on the football game, and you're missing some things. So you go back and you reflect on it again and you fill it in again. The love that you felt, or the frustration, or the things that, you know, weren't quite all together. You know what? I missed something. That's going to fall over if I don't go back and put a string on that or a brace on that. And so you do, because you reflect and you think about the possibilities. Quantum mechanics is all about possibilities. And the path then becomes sort of spiral, sort of layers upon layers upon layers. It's like reading the scriptures, really. If you ever read the scriptures, you ever read the Bible cover to cover? I mean, no, probably not. You probably studied. You probably opened and read like a gospel or a verse or maybe a chapter in a book. But if you read it cover to cover once, I doubt you remember very much, maybe a few things, some of the stories. But try reading it 20 times. Try reading it once a year for 5 years. I guarantee you this, in the 5th year, you will have a far different understanding of the gospel than you did the first year. Why is that? It's because of the spiral of understanding. Each time you go through, you gain more experience. You're able to behold more of the moment. You're able to envision what was going on at the time, what was being said, why it was being said, to whom it was being said. And then you begin to pick up the smells and the sounds and the emotions. You begin to feel, say, what Mary felt when Gabriel spoke to her for the first time. You begin to feel what it was like 3 years of traveling with Jesus, sleeping in the open, begging for meals, praying constantly, having your understanding deepened and deeper, and thinking about the impact of what you're doing in no place, really, no place. Between Bethlehem and Nazareth, it's nowhere. And there was no video camera. There were no scribes. Nobody was recording anything that was going on. You know when it was written? Years later, when the moments were reflected upon. When they were reflected upon by John and Matthew and Mark and Luke. They didn't write a journal. They wrote a memory. They wrote a recollection. And they had a much deeper understanding because they had reflected upon it over and over again. They had seen and experienced miracles, and they had felt love like some people cannot imagine. And that's just one record. The other record you have is yours, because there's, you've heard advertised on the Truth Frequency Radio Network and other networks something called the Akashic Record. I asked one of my teachers years ago, what's the Akashic Record? couldn't really explain it to me except that it's just this cosmic record that contains everything that ever was or ever will be, sort of, in the universe. And that's not really accurate. In fact, it misses the mark quite a bit. Because you know the only way things get written in the Akashic record? Immortality. Immortality, which means it takes a mortal existence, even for a god, to write in the Akashic record, must take on the flesh. The resurrection could have easily been written in the record without actually dying on the cross and being resurrected, if it were not so. But it isn't. It means only mortals can write in the record. Each of you are writing in the record every single day. Now, some of it's not going to make good reading later on by anyone, let alone you. And my supposition, my admonition, is for you to make your Akashic record interesting. Just love harder. Love better. Love more often. Do things, dream of things, write things, create things, paint, write a story, write a poem, even if it's short. Create things that are permanent in the Akashic record by your actions on your thoughts, because your thoughts are not recorded there. Only the things that you do are recorded there. And we need the record. We need the record because each time we do this, I told you, we spiral. Creation to creation, existence to existence, eternity to eternity. Remember I explained to you at one time, and I wish I could put the graph up here, that the original source of the universe took the square root of itself to create perspective, and then those two took the square root of themselves, which created the third dimension. And then those primary intelligences, which were divisions of the original source, kept taking the square root of themselves, and it doesn't take very many iterations for it to reach one. I don't mean exactly one, because you never quite exactly reach one, because it's asymptotic. That is to say, it ever approaches one, but it doesn't quite approach one. It doesn't quite reach one, so it's 1.0001, 1.00001. I mean, but these are all nearly identical intelligences, even though they're individual soul addresses, spirit addresses. And so they have a mortal existence, and the numerical or energetic value of that soul increases a little bit. Maybe now it's 1.00002. You begin to diverge from the other souls because you're an individual intelligence. You have free will. You're able to make choices. You're able to express desire. And each iteration of mortality, I'm talking about reincarnation here on a mathematical sense, each iteration of mortality, you add more stature because you read the record, you read the scripture, you read mortal life, and you fill in the stochastic value of it, the hologram of it, and you begin to increase in stature. In fact, all the souls do. And that's why the universe is expanding. That's why everything is growing, because we're growing in experience and our ability to observe and our ability to interact with one another. And I think maybe it's possible that we go through these iterations in groups. We may even wait for each other and go through being born, through several mothers across a large geographical area. And if possible, we come back together and interact with one another again. We marry each other. We give birth to each other. We teach each other. We work with each other. We fight one another. We continuously move through creation after creation, or iteration after iteration of mortality, and we increase in stature. Now look around, and you'll see a vast difference in the age of the souls around you. Some of you are young. You know you're young. You could feel it. You're inexperienced. Some of you, not young at all. Ancient, wise, well beyond your years. Some of you are worn out from it. You're already ready to go home. I've heard you say it. I've heard you say it. It makes me sad because you're still alive, still healthy, still beautiful, still full of value, and yet surprised each day that you wake up and you go through another day. It would make really no difference to you if you didn't. And that is sad. Because I love having you here. I love seeing your face. I love hearing your words. I love hearing your voice on the phone or reading your texts. I love having you here on this world. And I don't think we should waste that time worrying about whether we have stuff, a place to live or food to eat or stature or status. Because we have each other. We have each other. And at the end of the day, that's the path of mortality. Can't all be Donald Trumps. We can't all be, great inventors. We can't all be great engineers. It takes years and years and years to accomplish that. And some people look at it and say, I just don't have it in me anymore. I can't do that anymore. Yeah, I have 10 books in print, but I didn't start writing books till I was 52 years old. How many of you are 52 and think you're done? You've already screwed up so much, you're never going to get anything done. You're never going to be anything, never going to have anything. You don't have a 401k, don't even know how to spell it. I'm telling you, that's not the case. The path lays in front of you. All you have to do is stick your foot out and step on it. It doesn't matter how long it is. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you end mortal life along the way. If your heart gives out or your brain gives out or your somehow physical body just doesn't last long enough, it doesn't matter. That's one thing dying taught me. It just didn't matter. What mattered was to be on the path. What mattered was to have a dream and pursue it. That's where the joy is. You can feel it. You can see it. You know what I'm saying is true. That's where satisfaction comes from. That's where, making everything count, be valuable. When you look at your kids or you look at your grandkids or look at your neighbor or look at your lover or look at someone you want to be a lover with. I mean, this is the desire that makes it worth being mortal again, is that great emotion, that great feeling of bonding, of love. And don't lose that. So we talk about elections because they're important. Because we live in a republic and we can make these choices about our society and the way it's ruled and the way it's run. And a couple things I want you to be aware of before we close out this Super Bowl Sunday. And we head on earnestly into February. Can't believe how fast this year is going. Don't forget February 8th. You can join the webinar on February 8th or before and spend 2 hours with me. And we'll go over this in much more detail with slides and everything. But realize that this is an election year. Everything is on the table. Everything is on the table. All climate roads lead to socialism. So stay away from that. Don't buy into that at all. Don't give that any energy at all. Everything is designed in climate change and all the rhetoric surrounding it to take the money away from you and give it to someone else. All that is designed to do is make a painful, evil handful few, more powerful than you could ever imagine. Keep your freedom and avoid the climate change trap. Also, remember that trap is socialism. The fact that we have a socialist, open socialist running for president in our country, Bernie Sanders, should frighten the holy hell out of you. The fact that 3,000 supporters showed up at a rally for Bernie Sanders for the White House in Cedar Rapids yesterday should scare the hell out of you. Because these people have no idea what socialism is. I will tell you that socialists, they love socialism. You know why? Because it makes them rich. Look what Bernie Sanders has done. He had a ghostwriter write a book, put his name on it, and then he had his campaign, all those donations that you gave, $2, $5, $15, hundreds of thousands of copies of his book were bought with your campaign funds. And you know where that money went? It went right in Bernie Sanders' pocket. It made him a multimillionaire. And every TV ad you see run on TV, all those media buys, they're all handled by a media company, which is run by his wife, who scoops 15% of all those commercial buys, which, by the way, are expensive. 15% she scoops right off the top and right into their pockets. Bernie Sanders doesn't want to be president. Bernie Sanders wants to be rich. And that's what he's doing. He's making himself rich so he can live the rest of his life, senator or no senator, as a rich man. And that's all he wants. He's not worthy of the power. He wouldn't use the power righteously, and you know it. I just want you to be aware of it, because there are men and women out there that are trying to take advantage of you and fool you. And that is why you tune into this program, so I can keep you aware, so that will not happen to you. So go out tomorrow morning and look for the good in everyone you meet. Yes, that means the person at the Minute Mart that you get coffee from in the morning. It means the person that you run into at work. Smile at them, greet them, and show your love for them. And by doing so, you will have saved the planet. This is X Squared Radio. My name is Brooks Agnew, saying peace, Earth Explorers.